Welcome to Business Tips with Michael Tobian. Today we're going to be talking about 7 questions that you should ask yourself before starting your business. In the last session, we went over the mental process that you should go through when coming up with your business idea, efficient ways to do it, and the priorities that you should have when you're coming up with it, as opposed to the way everybody else does it. The main thing that I wanted to bring across in that message was that you should consider how you're going to monetize your business before you implement the procedures and before you hire people and before you go through that process. Today we're going to be talking about 7 other questions that you should ask yourself in this business idea brainstorming process. Okay? The first one here, what is my investment and commitment to this business? So everybody's in a different situation. Some people want to work full-time, some people want to work part-time, some people have multiple companies or multiple things going on in their life. Maybe they have a job and they're doing a side business. You need to ask yourself how much you want to work. That's an important thing to ask yourself, actually. If you're committing to an absolute full-time effort, then you're using almost all your time and you're not going to be able to be too involved with other projects. And if you're starting out, you got to realize that a business takes a lot longer to run than you think it's going to run. So if you're committing yourself to a full-time business investment, you're going to have to do it with both feet jumping in, and that's a very different situation than a part-time thing or something on the side, okay? You need to consider, along with this investment question, you need to consider, am I starting a business that's just me, or am I starting a company? Those are 2 different kinds of things. One is going to require more time investment, and one's going to require potentially more financial investment. So if you're starting a business that's just you, well, you're selling your time. You know, a lot of successful business people do this. Attorneys do this. An attorney, you're paying for their time and they are billing hours. Music teachers, they're billing hours. Now, people can run a very successful business being a music teacher or an attorney or any of these things. But what they are selling is their time. That's why attorneys are so expensive, because they've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, they bring a lot of value, but they only have so much time in the day, and their time is being billed. Somebody who might build an operation, a manufacturing company or something like that, the owner's time isn't being billed. They can get other people to do the work. The owner is spending all his time being efficient with his time so that he can make as much money as possible and lead the company. So it's kind of 2 different types of businesses. There's businesses where you're billing hours, and then there's a business where you're a company. And then there's kind of some hybrids. For example, like a dentist office is a little bit of a hybrid. You have people that are working at the dentist office for you. You have people that are selling products. The receptionist might be selling products, you might be selling services. So you're making money other than just billing your hours. But somebody goes to the dentist office to see a dentist, and that dentist can only fill so many spots during the day. So you gotta have to figure out what kind of a business it is and what your time investment, not just your financial considerations are. So that's starting a business where it's kind of you billing hours. If you're starting what I would consider a company, that often requires a bigger financial investment. You may have to hire people. You might have more value than just your time, which requires some cash. So that is all related to what your investment and time commitment is. And then finally, what is your financial investment? Some businesses can be started for free. Some businesses require a lot of capital. How much capital do you have? What kind of business are you going to start? My first business, I started with $30. I went and got a business. I was in college. I went and printed a bunch of business cards. And I remember I was just broke at the time. And I thought, man, $30. I'm just going to invest this $30 into business cards. That was a lot of money for me at the time because barely afford groceries. I was a poor college kid. I went and got those business cards made and I posted them around and I passed them around. Well, now that's a business with several employees, a big operation, and it's grown and we've never taken on any debt or anything. It's had to grow slower because we didn't infuse it with a bunch of capital, but it worked out really well. And we started it with 0 financial investment. I was just a college student. So those are just considerations that you're going to need. So that first one, what is my investment and my time commitment? The second consideration is, when am I going to start? Okay? Some people get in this trap of just never ever doing anything, never starting what they want to start. They think about it sometimes for years, and sometimes they never start it. I mean, I know people who I've talked with. In fact, I talked to a friend of mine the other day. I said, "What is something you've always wanted to do, but you've just never had you've always been chicken to do?" And he said, boom, he had an answer. It was to start this software or whatever. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, why didn't you do it? It's been several years. You could have had a good operation by now. Because people just don't know when to start. They're always looking for the perfect opportunity to start something. Well, I'll do it when I'm in a great financial situation. I've got nothing else going on, and my family life is this way or that way, and everything's just perfect in my life. Well, you know what I'm going to say, right? That's not a situation that's ever going to be. I mean, it might be, but you're going to be waiting for the perfect opportunity, and you might want to relax during that time. So anyway, there's never really a good time to start. I'm not telling you that every time is a good time to start. I'm telling you that there's really never a good time to start. So just do it, okay? I kind of have the opposite problem. I will sometimes just start things. Now, first of all, before I say that, there are times where I think are particularly bad to start. So if you're dealing with an emergency in your life, certainly that's not a good time to start it. Or, if you're, some examples, if you're going through a divorce, maybe that's not a good time to start it. If you have some health concerns or you have a disaster going on in your life, maybe you hold off. But unless it's an emergency, I would just get started on whatever your project might be. It's a funny story. I have the opposite problem. So I will just start things, and I will sometimes go too fast, and I'll say, oh, that's a good idea, and I'll just go and make a website and get the business going, and I'll start doing stuff. And sometimes I run into these situations where I'm like, I just did this, and it's like I ran ahead of myself. This is an example of something that did work out, and it's actually quite a successful little business I've got going on. But I had one of my businesses, I produce events, and I had a client that wanted to do a casino party. Now, this isn't real gambling. I live in Utah, so gambling's illegal. But casino parties, that is fake money and things like that, are popular for holiday events, and it's totally legal and has nothing to do with gambling because there's no money exchanged. I had a client that wanted a casino party, and they said, "Can you organize this for me?" And I said, "Sure." And I called a bunch of casino parties around town, and they were just so rude to me, and this one company in particular was so rude to me that I just thought, man, what is this guy's problem? I'm a customer. And he said something like, you're a middleman. I don't need you. We book enough events that I don't even need to talk to you. And I was just like, couldn't believe the way people were talking to me as a customer. And so immediately I thought, well, I'm going to just compete with these guys because obviously the work is so good that, this is going to be easy. So I had thought about that, and I kind of mulled it over for half a day. I said, man, I want to start a casino party company. And I started receiving these texts all of a sudden that would say cat facts. And then it would say some random fact about a cat. And I said, this is weird. 5 texts a day. I was getting 4 or 5 texts a day. And by the second day, I'm sitting here thinking, who is sending me these texts about cat facts? Somebody signed me up for some stupid spam thing, playing a prank on me. And I was just convinced it was that guy who I talked to who was so rude to me on the phone that ran that casino party company. And so I immediately said, I'm going to start a casino party company. I'm going to compete with this guy, and he's going to be sorry for sending me these cat facts. Well, anyway, I found a guy that made casino tables, and I bought a bunch of chips. This is like probably not the way I would recommend starting a business, but I just bought all the equipment. I said, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to start it. And I put together some marketing materials, and I just kind of started it. And well, as it turned out, it was my friend who sent me the cat facts thing, completely unrelated, and it was just a joke. And he had heard me complain about it, and so he didn't mention it, but it was like quite far down the road where he admitted that he sent it to me. So that's a funny example of, me just starting something. This was because I was, because I'm inclined to just start things, but also because I was kind of mad at this guy for playing this prank on me when he actually didn't play a prank on me. That's kind of a long story. But when to start, I would say the answer is usually just go ahead and start it. It's okay if it starts small. It doesn't need to be big. If you get going, then you'll start focusing on it and you'll start putting more investment into it. Okay, the other thing you should consider, what is my value? Some people have a particular set of skills that are unique and valuable. That's advantageous when you're starting a business because you already have this high barrier to entry. It's difficult for other people to start. You can very efficiently start that business with few mistakes. This was the case with me. I'm a musician. I started a music production business. Well, it's hard for other people to get into that, and also I had a lot of knowledge about it, and so I was able to do it without a lot of trial and error. Okay. So most of my businesses are actually in the entertainment space. What are your skill sets? Are they unique? Maybe your value lies in the network that you have. Maybe there's influential people in your life, or you're able to network really well. You've got a lot of friends. You've got people who are in a position of high influence. Well, that's value right there. Okay. Maybe you have a financial situation. Maybe you've got a lot of money, or a lot of, you've got a lot. You have the access to funds that other people might not have. Well, that's value. Maybe you've got software experience. That's value. Maybe you're a software developer. You don't have to hire a bunch of developers. Figure out what your value is, and you ought to consider doing a business along those lines. It's something that's more fun for you, but you have a lot of value over here. Well, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that you should consider that as part of your decision making as far as what kind of business you should start. Okay, another thing that you should consider: what is the scalability of your business that you're going to start? Okay, we'll talk about this more in another session, but some businesses bottleneck. You can run them, but then you can't really grow them past, or you have a lot of difficulty getting them past what they call a bottleneck. Maybe it's the location that you live in is not conducive to a particular kind of business. You'll have limited ability to grow your product or grow your services. Some businesses, like fast food restaurants and things like that, they are limited to a certain geographical area around the business. Generally, if I'm going to go to a little sandwich shop, I'm not going to drive an hour down the road. I'm just going to go to the one that's down the street. I've sold a lot of sandwich shops as a business broker, and they all kind of generally, if they're successful, make about the same amount of money. One little sandwich shop is not pulling in millions of dollars usually. Usually, if somebody wants to be very successful with sandwich shops and they want to scale it, they have one, and then they get another one, and they get another one, and they're usually expanding their locations, and that's how they scale that type of a business. But you got to realize some businesses in and of themselves are not going to scale very big. Some will, technology companies and things like that. You can sometimes sell those to anywhere in the entire world. And you've got, 7 billion people as potential customers. Well, a sandwich shop only has a few hundred, maybe a few thousand people as potential customers. So you need to figure out, do I want to scale my business? And if I do, how am I going to do it? Am I going to have to do different locations? Am I going to have to buy other companies? Okay. Considering the scalability of a company is wise to do right at the idea phase of your business plan. Okay. There's lots of different examples we could go through on that. Barriers to entry. We kind of talked about this for a minute. If you can get into a business that has a high barrier to entry, that's going to be advantageous to you. Barrier to entry meaning it's more difficult for other people to compete with you. So here's some examples. Maybe you own or have the rights to a particular software, or you have the ability to create a specific software that only you can create. Well, that's a big barrier to entry oftentimes. You're going to be able to go in there and you're going to have a hard time getting people to compete with you. Maybe you have a lot of equipment, you have access to a lot of equipment, and you may want to start a highly equipment intensive business. That's a big barrier to entry. If somebody doesn't have a lot of money, they can't buy a lot of equipment. Somebody's going to need a big financial investment to get into an equipment intensive business, and it may take them a long time to break even on that investment. Okay? Talents and skills, we kind of talked about this, but you may have a particular talent in a particular area or particular skills. Well, that's a high barrier to entry. Okay? You may have a head start on the market. Let's say in your current job, let's say you work for another company, you are ahead of the market in either your knowledge or some kind of assets that you might have. this can be a high barrier to entry, because in order for somebody to compete with you, they're going to have to work longer to get to the point where you are already starting at. Okay. Sometimes that's important when you're partnering with people. You can consider people who already know a ton about something or have a lot of experience with something. Niche. There might be a niche category that you can focus on that's not going to really have it may have a high barrier to entry because not a lot of people have any interest or maybe even know about the niche. I started a company called Dinosaur Events, and we have manufactured, we have 15-foot long dinosaur costumes manufactured, and we feature them on television shows. We've worked with Nickelodeon and Comedy Central and 21st Century Fox, Paramount Pictures. They've been all over these TV shows and movies. And part of that niche is just like no one's really ever thought about that. There's these unique costumes that are manufactured overseas, and not a lot of people think to get into that business, and we kind of have the idea. Now, there's been a few other people that have popped up and done that, but the barrier to entry was that nobody was really crazy enough to go and buy these costumes and try to make a business out of it. Network. You may have a network. Kind of talked about that. Your network might be another business organization that you work for or work with or have experience with. A lot of people that know you from a past career. You may have influence in a certain area. Some people are really good at social media. They've got tons of friends. They're a social media influencer. They've got a huge network that they can expose that business to. Education. Some people have an intense, expansive amount of education in a particular area. If you're an attorney, you've gone to a lot of school. If you're a doctor, you've gone to a lot of school. So connections that you might have. Some people may not have a huge network, but they're just very connected. Their dad it owns a big company, or their dad is connected, or they're friends with people who are connected, or friends with wealthy people. That's advantageous if you're into business, if you rub shoulders with wealthy people. There was a poker game going around that friends of mine would go to because there was a lot of wealthy people in the poker game, and sometimes it's to your advantage to hang around a lot of wealthy people who might invest in your business. A barrier to entry might be that you work harder than anybody else in town, and you are just going to kill it, and you are just a workhorse. Not very many people are workhorses. A lot of people like to watch TV at night. A lot of people like to sit around. Well, if you're a workaholic, that's a big barrier to entry because you're going to outwork everybody. Okay, another thing to consider. Who are my customers? Is my customer base big enough for this business? Okay. Some business ideas are really good, but the customer base is so small. If I want to start a software or an app that's going to help, underwater basket weavers, well, how many underwater basket weavers are there? There's probably none. So even though that's a really cool idea, how are we going to monetize it? Remember how we talked about last time? Your customer base isn't big enough to really scale that or monetize it. So that may not be a good idea. And I'm not actually telling you what's a good idea or what's not. I'm just giving you things to consider. What's the competition like? Okay. Who are my customers in regards to what my competition is like for those customers? Some fields are very attractive for people to start, and so there's just a ton of competition. So these customers are being sold by tons of people, and sometimes it's so difficult. So that's some fields you get into. Some fields, the search engine optimization efforts are so highly competitive that you're going to run into some challenges because of that. Okay. And then the last thing I'll just chat about is an exit strategy. It's important to figure out what your exit strategy is when you're coming up with a business idea. Are you going to run this business until you die? Or are you going to sell it in a year? Are you going to sell it in 2 years, 5 years? Are you just going to run it for a while and then just be done with it? Are you going to pass it on to your kids? You don't have to have the answers to that question or those questions, but it's important to have something in mind because you might start the business and run it differently if you're going to sell it than if you're going to hold on to it. I had a business that I started fairly recently, actually, that I started it and said, I am going to sell this business in 2 years. And I'm running that business a lot differently than I would have if I was just going to hold on to it. I'm trying to build something that is really turnkey, that I can sell it. Somebody can just get in there, run it, and it's going to be easy for them. And I'm going to bring a lot of value to somebody who's going to buy it. Okay. If I'm thinking more long term, I might not care so much if my name's attached to it or things like that. I started a company, entertainment production company, and I had my name attached to it, Michael Tobian, etc. A few years later, I realized this is not something that's conducive to an exit strategy. If I ever sell this company one day, nobody's going to want to buy Michael Tobian and such. So I changed the name of the company. The company is actually called Utah Live Bands. It's a production company. That is a sellable company. I've got processes in place. Somebody can buy it, and the name is not going to be a big problem. They're not buying my name. Now, again, I'm not telling you what to call your business. If you want to infuse your name in the business, maybe there's a lot of value in doing that. But there might be some cons to that as well, including your exit strategy. There might be considerations with your exit strategy that people might not want to be associated with your name because it's not their name. So it's something to consider. All right. I would suggest, if you're curious about an exit strategy, planning that ahead of time, you might want to talk to a business broker. I'm a business broker. I work with Alpine Business Brokers, and we often consult with people about their exit strategies well before they end up selling their business or even listing their business for sale. I sometimes get people coming up to me and they say, hey, I want to sell in about a year. What do I need to do? And I usually always say to them, you are so wise to come to me right now because I can tell you a lot of things that you can do to make your business way more sellable. I'll tell them to get their books in order, and I'll tell them, you want to get your business to where it's turnkey. A lot of people get concerned when they go into a business, and so much of the business is tied to the owner's personal name. You want your customers to be familiar with the business, not just you. There's a lot of advice I can give to people when they're wanting to sell their business down the road. All right, quick review. Here are 7 questions you should ask yourself before starting your business. What is my investment or time commitment? When should I start the business? What is my value that I'm bringing to the table? What is the scalability of what I'm going to start? What are my barriers to entry? Who are my customers? And what's my exit strategy? Thanks for joining me. I hope you'll subscribe below if you'd like to learn more about business tips going forward. And we'll see you next time.